fine if I did that word. So thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming today. I'm going to try to take this off. Don't get pictures, Julie. My name is Tessa Roberts, and on behalf of the Kensington and Area Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to welcome everybody here to the 2023 District 20 Candidates Debate. Thank you for coming out tonight, and this evening is sure to be a friendly and informative debate. I'd like to introduce the candidates for tonight's debate. Very common word to this. So first, I'd like to welcome Hunter Guindon, representing the Green Party, Richard Schroeter, representing the Liberal Party, and MacKay, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. And Maggie, representing the New Democratic Party, has sent her regrets. So thank you to all of the candidates for taking part in this debate tonight. We know it's a very busy time for you. And our moderator for tonight, who's much better at speaking than I am apparently, is Chris Fry. There we go. And he will go over all of the rules for tonight. And let's do this thing. I definitely messed up way back there, so sorry.
Great job. All right, thank you, Tessa. Welcome, everyone. I'm Christopher Bride. Looking forward to a positive debate tonight. The Kensington and Area Chamber of Commerce is working extremely hard to keep every aspect of this event transparent and neutral. This debate is intended to be friendly and under strict guidelines. All decisions have been decided by a random draw. The table seating on stage tonight has been assigned by alphabetical order of political party name. This has been done to ensure transparency and neutrality on the Chamber's part and for people associated with this debate. The debate will be a question and rebuttal format. There will be no questions from the floor. Each candidate will be given 4 minutes of uninterrupted time to present their platform, and there will be no rebuttal after the platform presentation. The format of the question and rebuttal session will be a question will be asked by myself, the moderator. Candidate 1 will have a maximum of 2 minutes to speak uninterrupted, and then that will be followed by group rebuttal time of a maximum of 4 minutes. After that, we'll move on to the next question. At this time, I would like to ask the two people responsible for timing tonight's debate, John and Rosa Lee, to please stand up so everybody can see where the timing occurs at. A timer person will run the time clock located in front of the stage. There will also be a second timer who will be responsible for holding up the flashcards to help candidates with timing. So green will equal 1 minute left, yellow will mean 30 seconds are left, and red will indicate that time is up. There will also be an audio technician that will have the capability of shutting off the microphones to ensure control and fairness to all candidates. But let's hope it doesn't come to that. Moderator, myself, will have the option to extend rebuttal time if the conversation is positive and informative and needs a short extension in time. The moderator also has the option to move on to the next question earlier than the time frame of 4 minutes rebuttal time if discussion has ceased. The residents of District 20 were asked to submit questions in writing to the Kensington Area Chamber of Commerce and in advance of this evening. This master list of questions was emailed out to each candidate earlier today. There were no indications of which questions will actually be asked this evening. So I will be drawing from a number from the bowl and will ask the corresponding question to that number. I will ask between 8 and 12 questions, whatever time will allow. After the question and rebuttal session is completed, each candidate will be given 4 minutes of uninterrupted time to present their closing comments, and there will be no rebuttal at that time. All right, so without further ado, we will begin with the presentation of each candidate's platform. After the draw we did earlier, Richard Schroeter of the Liberal Party will be speaking first.
Test. Okay. At almost every door that I've been to in this campaign, I've spoken to people who are frustrated and afraid for themselves and for their loved ones because they are seeing that their healthcare system is being eroded away. And it doesn't matter what party stripes they wear, they're feeling left behind and abandoned by inactions of the government they voted in. My name is Richard Schroeter. I'm a Liberal candidate for District 20 here. I moved here 3 years ago from Charlottetown. Even though it was in the midst of a pandemic, we knew that this place was beautiful and it's ready to grow. The people in our neighborhoods have been kind, and we are very grateful for this community. I've worked in many aspects of service, 18 years in Veterans Affairs, where I've helped build learning modules for Canadian schools, using the voices and actions of our veterans to share the history of their deeds. I was part of the foster parent program for 10 years, showing children who were falling through the cracks and that they were worthy of love. And the last 3 years, I've also been working with Handle with Care as a parenting facilitator, guiding parents through self-care so that they can help build a loving environment for their children to grow up healthy and happy. These are the services that will be my guide as the kind of politician I will be. Care for the constituents, listen to them as they share concerns, ask them for the solutions that they have since they're in it, because the answers are in the room. Bring those voices forward and act on their behalf. And the last part of this, which I think is key, connect with them, check in with them, not only at election time. Communication with people who put you in this position cannot be secondary. The power is supposed to be in constituents. That is where I will keep it if I'm voted in. Now, while I understand that healthcare is the main topic of this election, I know there are many parallel concerns. I've spoken to folks for the Concerned Economic Owners PEI Coalition. They represent an industry here that is in danger of being lost. I've spoken to farmers with land and firearm concerns and that need to be addressed so that their way of life can be maintained. Fisheries, farming, tourism, and many more. We have it all in District 20. That is not something that I take lightly.
Thank you, Richard. Next up, representing the Progressive Conservative Party, MacKay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's certainly an honor to be here this evening on this beautiful Wednesday evening. I'd like to start off by thanking and congratulating both Hunter and Richard. It's not easy to put your name on a ballot. I remember the first time I was asked. It's a big commitment. There's a lot of work, and anybody that does it, I certainly admire them because it takes a team and a family to be part of it. And so regardless of what political stripe we all are, I want to thank them for being part of the democratic process. So I've been your MLA here in Kensington Malpex since 2015. I was elected. I went into opposition, which was great for me. It really got me to learn how the political system worked and what it looked like. I was very fortunate in 2019 to be elected the second time and represent you as your MLA. And I've certainly enjoyed doing that. But during the 4 years in government, I've certainly seen issues as well. Some things are easy to fix, and some things aren't so easy to fix. And I like these two individuals to the right. We hear the same concerns. Obviously, every door I go to, we know healthcare is an issue. We know housing is an issue. We know the cost of living is an issue. So in our platform, you're going to see us focus on really those three key things. As the month goes, I can talk a little more about it. But what I can say is a lot of ideas come from the people, not only from the district, but from other parties as well, which I'll be able to talk to as we get going. I know some of the ideas that I've been able to run with have come from this district. One example, if we remember the shingles vaccine, that come from a gentleman and his wife in Long River. That's where that idea came from. It was discussed, but it was that election in 2019 and them pushing me towards it that I fought for them and was able to do that. So the voices, not only of the district, but the Islanders as well as all parties, put us in the right direction to make positive change. So it's certainly been a pleasure up to date to represent you as your MLA, and I look forward to hopefully many more years. So thank you, and good luck, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. And finally, we now invite Hunter Guindon of the NDP to present his platform.
Hi, I'm Hunter Guindon from the Green Party. Good evening. I thank you all for coming out, and thank you so much to the Chamber for putting on this event. Clearly, we're at a fork in the road where there's, we now have the opportunity as Islanders to make a decision on how we would like to go into the next 4 years. We can re-elect the government we've had and remain with the status quo, continue on with the plans that they have for this island for the next 4 years. But we also have an opportunity to elect a new government with new ideas, new solutions, and a new vision for Prince Edward Island. And our vision for Prince Edward Island is an island that works for everybody. The Green Party is running a slate of incredible people, but I think what we're most proud of is that our candidates are everyday people. We've got farmers, single mothers, people that are still in school, people that work in the service industry, people with disabilities, a doctor, just everyday people that face the same issues that all of you face and everybody else in this community faces, and that end up with the same result from either government actions or inactions. They all end up in the same place as the people that we're trying to represent. As a person with a disability myself, I chose to run this election because I've single-handedly had to experience the many loopholes and endless amounts of red tape that everyday Islanders and other Islanders with disabilities have to face in order to get the help that they need, and in many cases in order to access well-intended government programs that just end up tied up in so much red tape and bureaucracy that they don't often get as much help as they could to the people that really need it. Someone at the door the other day said to me something really profound that's really stuck with me now. And they said they've always been a single party voter. They voted for the same party that their parents had voted for their entire lives. But they said that this time around they were really going to think about it, and that they sat down and thought, do I feel today that I live in a better place than I did 4 years ago? And her answer to that question was no. And so she was going to choose to make a different selection on the ballot this time. So I challenge all of you to sit back before we go to the polls on April 3rd and have that same conversation with yourself as to whether or not you feel that today you're in a better place than you were 4 years ago. The Greens are ready to invest in housing, pharmacare, healthcare, and bring new solutions to the table for each of these individual items that seem to be stuck in a rut and not seeing as much change as people would like to see. Bring new, fresh ideas, new solutions, and new voices to the table to try to fix those issues. There's my green card. Like I said, I challenge all of you to just really reflect on what issues are important to you before you make your way to the polls on April 3rd. And if you'd like to see some change and someone can make a difference, I hope that I'm the candidate that can do that for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Hunter, representing the Green Party. All right, thank you to all the candidates. We're now going to move on to the question and rebuttal portion of the evening. And I just want to remind everyone that each candidate answering the question will have 2 minutes without interruption to answer, and then there will be 4 minutes of group rebuttal time. The order of speaking was randomly drawn with the candidates as witnesses. So let's begin with the first question here. Okay, so the first question, the first candidate answering will be MacKay of the Conservative Party. Before the pandemic, members of the Kensington and Area Chamber of Commerce identified labor and workforce challenges as a top concern for their businesses. This concern has only increased since the pandemic. In fact, the Atlantic Province's Economic Council identified that today there are only 7 young workers available for every 10 retirees, and it's predicted this will continue to worsen. What action will your party take to address the fact that Prince Edward Island does not have enough young people and workers to meet the current and future workforce demands? MacKay, begin.
Thank you. Appreciate the question. So this has obviously been a concern for a while now, and immigration has been a big part of our solution. When I was elected into government 4 years ago, my role was Minister of Economic Growth, Tourism and Culture, and I headed the immigration department with me. And one thing I noticed early on, we were great with bringing our immigrants in, but our retention was absolutely terrible. Numbers don't lie, and I believe back then it was about 38% retention rate. Now we successfully got it up, I believe it's close to 60% or 62%. But with that comes other challenges as well, and you're seeing it in our healthcare system, our housing, and our school system. But immigration is the way out of this, and I hear a lot of people, especially when you go to the doors, they say, where's all our people, where's our workforce? Well, our baby boomers are retiring off, and I often use my dad's family. Was a family of 10 people, and now my family only has 3. So if you look at the amount of people right now that are retiring off, and there's not as many young people coming in, we need to make sure that our immigration numbers are there, but at the same time, we need to make sure that if we're taking in 3,000-4,000 immigrants a year, that we have enough housing, we have the education system, and we have the doctors for it, which has been lacked for a lot of years. And I know we're not running out of time, but I can explain a little more as we get going. But what has taken place is not only previous governments from the last 25 years, but there's been no long-term plan. Governments have looked at 4-year solutions, and I've been doing the opposite ever since I've took over both roles. I'm looking at 20 years out, not 4 years out, and that's when you'll hear a little more about talk about with our housing numbers and what it looks like for that reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. MacKay. All right, I now invite the candidate rebuttal discussions. It's an open floor debate amongst all 3 candidates. You guys have 4 minutes.
I apologize, I want to ask, do we answer that question as well, or is it?
Yeah, you can answer it, you can rebut what Mr. MacKay said, whatever you choose.
I know that with the Liberal platform, there's seasonal worker benefits programs that are being laid out. There's a labor market strategy, which is very important. Immigration is a key as well, but immigration with both accountability and consequence. A lot of immigrant workers that have come in have had terrible stories that have happened to them, and there hasn't been a lot of accountability on why that happens. Also, marketing. Marketing is a big thing. So working with high schools to promote careers in agriculture. When I was a kid, it was taught. It was taught that these are the things to go into. We were shown, and we had traveled farms and we traveled fisheries, and I don't know if that happens as much anymore, and it should, because it would really spark some interest. And our elders, they want to keep this going. It's what PEI is all about.
I definitely agree with the other 2 candidates that immigration has to play a big part in fixing the worker shortage and the labor shortages. But we can't forget the young people that are already here and the programs we can put in place to keep them here and encourage them to pursue work in the industries that need the most help and need the most staff right now. Part of our plan would involve investing in post-secondary institutions and specific programs that we would target in order to drive people to, say, the construction sector and help them get on their feet in the construction sector and then incentivize them to stay here. Certainly, like they said, the immigration is a huge part of it, and like Richard said, we've all heard horror stories of the treatment of temporary foreign workers and immigrants that come here to work, and Green government would proclaim the Temporary Foreign Worker Act to give those foreign workers the same rights that the people standing right beside them on the farm or in the factory or wherever have. But as a young person myself and someone who has gone through a modern education and held a modern student loan. I know that a huge portion of why people my age determine what career path they're going to take and what specific sectors they're going to enter depends on their financial ability to pursue those dreams. And certainly if a government was proactive in investing in the different programs that target the workers that we need, we would have more young people pursuing those specific industries and specific jobs to help fill the labor shortages we see.
That's exactly what we're looking to do. So for example, you look at what we've done and we partnered up with the Construction Association. We know we've got a shortage of tradespeople, so we funded our Construction Association to teach as they go. So when I met with the Construction Association, they were building mini barns, and I said, is there any possible way that we could look at building tiny homes? Could we teach them, skill them, and build homes to help fix our housing situation? And they thought that was a tremendous idea. So I think the last number I heard was 34 signed up for the program, and not only are they learning the trades, but they're helping with their housing shortage, which is incredible, and it's very rewarding to see. So I think partnerships like that is going to help us out. I know with ourselves in government, the government as a whole is about 12,000 people working for them, and with the aging population, there's 25% set to retire in the next 5 years, which is a significant number. So it's going to be a challenge, and there's no doubt about it. So I think being creative and doing what we can.
And that's time. Thank you, Mr. MacKay. All right, so we'll move on to the next question. This question will be directed at Hunter Guindon of the Green Party. As farmers invest in sustainability initiatives to improve soil conditions, they're looking to build more organic matter in the soil and increase soil biodiversity. A good way to do this is through natural additives such as manure and cover crops, as well as various other new and improving agronomic technologies. Increasing cattle production will help all farmers by increasing the availability of manure and other crop inputs and soil amendments used by farmers in PEI to sustainably grow food and assure the longevity of our productive soils. How will your party support farmers in their efforts to improve soil conditions and improve sustainability in the agriculture industry?
Thank you. And I think nobody would argue that the Greens have always kind of been known as the most forthcoming with their environmental policies and always been great stewards of the environment. And certainly a Green government would spend, we have a huge portion of our platform that's directly focused on the environment, and farmers are a huge part of the environment, specifically here on Prince Edward Island. A Green government would increase funding to programs like the Agriculture Stewardship Program and ALUS to help farmers that want to increase their soil biodiversity and soil health, but don't necessarily have the capital or the funding behind them to do that. Another thing that a Green government would want to do is incentivize farmers with carbon capture credits. So for reducing tillage or specifically for planting cover crop, like was asked in the question, anything that will take the carbon out of the air and have that carbon held in the soil and replenish the nutrients in the soil. We want to incentivize farmers to do that, not only so that they want to do that, but so that they can afford to do that and keep the soil biodiversity on Prince Edward Island healthy.
All right, thank you, Mr. Guindon. I now invite the candidate rebuttal discussions. You guys have 4 minutes.
Well, first of all, we appreciate all the work the farmers have done in this. They've been doing this forever. There's a lot in the brain trust already. And thank you to the leadership by the East Prince Edward Environment Association. They're also doing a lot of work on this, and this is something that we would base a lot of the things that we have in our platform for this on. Encouraging the strategic expansion of PEI's livestock herd through price reassurances, low interest government financing and grants, support new entrants to strengthen the long-term viability of PEI's livestock in industry. Assisting livestock farmers to invest in adequate fencing, enhanced manure management through low interest government financing, and take more of a provincial approach to managing the agricultural land so that everyone can benefit equally throughout.
So, obviously, we have quite a few farms in through the district, and going to farm, whether it's Trent Cage's farm or Kenny McClellan or the Cousinses, there's a current theme, and farmers are struggling each and every day, and there's not a better environmentalist than a farmer. They do absolutely everything they can do to protect their land, and are very passionate about it. And every farm I go to, I know when I was at Trent's last week and Cousinses, the best for the land is manure. And there's such a shortage of beef cattle right now, and they're saying, why can't we find a program that would help us raise beef cattle? It would give us a 4-year crop rotation instead of the 3, it would make our land more healthy. And they said, we just want an avenue to do that. And this is coming from the farmers, and I constantly hear it from the farmers, and I know they want these farms to succeed. It's getting harder and harder for the younger generation farmer to get into farming. I hear that as well, and we want to see these family farms stay within the family. And I think if we can work with the farmers and help them clear the path to what they need to be, and put some low-interest loans to help them out. At the end of the day, agriculture is the backbone not only of this district, but the island. There's a $2 billion spin-off. And the farming community is busy. We can build housing, we can find doctors, we can build schools. But that agriculture community, we have to keep them going.
I want to add to that too, just consultation with the farmers and the people that are in it is key. It's key in all of the industries, and a lot of times I think people don't hear from government, and they're not added to the conversation. I grew up on a farm, like a lot of people did around here, and they've been the ones who have maintained our waterways, our landways, and they have those answers too, and that's what we have to bring forward. That's the way that I look at all of it. I think it's important that you were part of that conversation, because those answers that you have can be implemented a lot faster than people coming down from the top with analytics from somewhere else.
Yeah, we're running short on time here, but just I wanted to jump in on Richard's point there, that consultation with farmers in this circumstance and with stakeholders on each of these issues is absolutely critical. On the doors the other day, I was talking to a farmer, and when I knocked on his door, he said, "Oh, you guys only ever come around here when you're looking for a vote," which is certainly has been correct over the past many years, but a green government is all about consulting with the people who are changes affect, and that's something we would want to further.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to the next question. This one will be directed at Richard Schroeter of the Liberal Party. We hear consistently about the rising cost of living and the need to ensure islanders have a livable income. Businesses continue to meet and exceed the minimum wage increases, but this only addresses one side of the issue. While wages increase, the lowest income earners are taxed at the highest rate in Atlantic Canada. And Prince Edward Island is one of only 2 provinces that doesn't increase tax brackets by cost of living. So as wages go up, islanders ultimately could be paying more in taxes and taking home less. What is your party's tax plan to ensure islanders can cope with the increasing cost of living?
Thank you. We're evaluating the provincial tax model to better align with our Atlantic counterparts. That will help ensure that we're competitive in an attractive manner to the market. Some of the folks that I've talked with, it's been very interesting when I hear someone say, well, this government has a surplus. They're very excited about that. That surplus is supposed to mean that, we've been very frugal and things are going well, but the surplus is money from the feds that haven't been spent on the people, and a large portion of the surplus is the inflationary dollars that we've all felt. People making choices between bread and eggs. Those extra dollars are what part of that surplus is. So, I don't know, it's upsetting because I see so many people at the door who they don't have their electricity on because they need to feed themselves for the week. And I don't know, it's supposed to be better than this.
So one thing, sorry.
All right, thank you, Mr. Schroeter, and let's give the timers a second to reset the clock here. And we'll now begin the open rebuttal discussion amongst all three candidates. You guys have 4 minutes.
So this is one thing we've been very, very passionate about. We've certainly seen the challenges during COVID and what has taken place. I always give credit where credit is due, and the federal government was absolutely great to us during COVID. There was approximately $1 billion coming into this province, which really helped benefit Islanders during those times. And when it comes down to some of the programs we were able to do, you look at the heat pump program. I believe the criteria now is 75,000. The goal is for every Islander to end up with a free heat pump. Me being Minister of Social Development and Housing, we know there's a lot of seniors and low income struggling, so we came out with rental vouchers to help support low income and seniors that needed that. Yes, there certainly was a surplus, and I always question the accountants on that. I said, how did we not know there was a surplus coming? And the message came back is the economy was that good. They never predicted the economy to stay as strong as it did, and it did. So once we found out there was a surplus, we wanted all that money to go back to Islanders, and we went in with the payments to put that money back into Islanders' pockets. Another thing we were able to do in the last 4 years is the Toonie Transit, which has been a tremendous success. Now you can ride from tip to tip on $2. So it's worked out great. We're looking to expand that. We've increased the basic personal tax exemption, and if elected again, we're going to 15,000 on that, which would be a tremendous help as well. So there's very, very good things happening. Sometimes not everybody knows about them, but we've been able to do some great things over the 4 years we've been in.
I guess my question to that would be if your budget as a surplus is known, why didn't you drop a budget instead of an election to show people that you had that plan in place?
Well, it's a good question. You have to touch base with the Premier on that. I found out about the election the day before it was called, so I'm not sure why that was the case, but what I can tell you is that the surplus that was there, we could have spent it in other areas, but we knew Islanders were struggling, and we wanted to put that in Islanders' pockets. And I've heard, especially from seniors at the door, that they're very grateful for that. We see our seniors struggling. We know what they're getting out of Ottawa isn't near enough to survive, and these programs are helping them out. So as long as we can continue to do that, we certainly will. If there's ever a surplus, we're going to make sure it goes back into Islanders' pockets.
Just, you guys must use different sign printers than we do, because interesting, your signs were up the day after the election was called for, God, they only figured out the day before. Anyways, the basic personal exemption is certainly a measure that the government has taken that has helped a lot of people, but something that we hear from people that didn't help, because the basic personal exemption only helps people who make over that amount of money. The people that make less than that feel no impact from the sort of the decrease of the basic personal exemption. Unlike your colleagues have told Islanders in the House, there are several people on this island making minimum wage who wouldn't benefit from things like that, and a Green government would increase the low-income tax threshold to $25,000, as well as outside of tax measures. We would invest $18 million into pharmacare, which would reduce out-of-pocket costs from everyday Islanders that need to go to the pharmacy and spend an exponential percentage of their income on drugs. And then we would start.
All right, thank you guys. All right, we'll move on to the next question. This one will be directed at MacKay. Issues including homelessness, addiction, and mental health have become a barrier to the continued recovery of our communities. It is imperative to ensure that all members of the community can thrive and that our communities remain places where families will want to move rather than from. What will your government do to play a meaningful leadership role in addressing this crisis?
Thanks for the question. So, obviously, this is a tremendous issue, one that has been in the media numerous times. And what I can tell you, when I took over the role as Minister of Social Development and Housing in July, the very first two questions I asked is what was our vacancy rate and what was our homeless population here in PEI. So, come to find out that we had approximately 100 homeless living in a tent encampment, and we had about 1,400 units needed just to catch up with our housing crisis. So we knew we had to act quick, and we had to be creative. So the very first thing we done, we ended up buying some mobile units out of Grand Prairie, Alberta. We trucked them across the country and set them up in Charlottetown for a homeless community, and they're full every night. My worst fear was that if somebody froze on the street, I didn't know how I could handle myself, knowing that I could have done something about it. So we certainly took some initiative on that. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. It's got a long way to go, but we're going in the right direction. And I know there's numerous people in this room that are very passionate about this subject. At the end of the day, our homeless population, they're people too. And I've always taken that into account with every decision I made. So this is only a band-aid solution. There needs to be more come. In the capital budget that was passed, there was a $3 million fund in there to help them expand on that situation, which unfortunately both opposition parties had voted down. It was the largest housing request in the history of the province, totaling about $158 million, and to my surprise, both opposition parties voted down, which was sad to see, because we need housing not only for our homeless, but for everyone, and it's probably one of the biggest needs we're facing right now. There's approximately, just to get caught up, there's 2,800 units we need this year. And the most that we've ever been able to build as a government this last year was 1,400. So it's going to take a lot of creativity. We're buying absolutely every modular home we can.
And that's time, Mr. MacKay. Thank you. All right, I now invite the candidate rebuttal discussion to begin, and we'll put 4 minutes up on the clock.
Well, some of this, part of the big thing with our platform is that we're going to split up mental health and healthcare aspects, because everything that is being done in the hospitals, for instance, right now, they are trying to do it all, and it's not helping anyone. So having a separate mental health and wellness department, implementing emergency shelter assessments and recommendations from 2019. Also increasing the number of psychiatrists and adding psychologists into the healthcare system. Some of these will help in the midterm, but these are part of plans that will help for the long term. It's going to take a while to fix what's been broken. And we're meeting very different people at the doors, and I haven't talked to anybody yet who has said, hey, it's really great that there is a surplus of stuff that hasn't been spent on me yet. I'm really happy about that. I haven't heard that yet.
I'm going to jump in here. It's a topic I'm extremely passionate about. I spent several hours volunteering down at the tent encampment in Charlottetown, and have been the boots on the ground down there with many other volunteers, and spoken to those people one-on-one as people about the issues they face. And certainly the mobile shelters have been a great addition for some of them. Many of them feel that government didn't go down there and consult with them before they decided what they were going to do with them, and before they decided to take a couple front-end loaders in there and bulldoze their homes for the Canada Games. And many of them who this government seemingly hasn't viewed as people are just everyday people like us. There's so many people on this island that are one paycheck away from living in a tent in a park in Charlottetown. There are several people down at that encampment who I would just be striking up conversation with, and would tell me their life story and say, listen, I work a 40-hour-a-week full-time job, and the housing crisis in this province is so bad that I can't put together enough money to come up with first and last month's rent, let alone find a place. With that, the shelters, many of them, like you said, have moved into those shelters, but there are still a few down there that I talked with personally. And when the shelters were getting put together, I asked, are you happy that the shelters up the road are going to be put together maybe sometime after they continue to get delayed? And they looked me in the eyes and said, no, if they would have come and asked us, they would have realized that we need 24-hour shelters. This one gentleman said, I work a 40-hour-a-week job working overnights. Every hour that those shelters are open, I'm at work. So when those shelters close in the morning and kick everybody out, I have nowhere to go lay my head for the day before I go back to work.
So a couple of things on that. There is programs for first month's and last month's rent. And our staff was down at that encampment, and obviously the media doesn't cover everything, but there's a couple of things I want to share with you on that. So one, yes, the fire marshal shut everything down there, and there was a reason why, and we took quite a bit of heat over that. But what took place, there was 3 left in the encampment, there was some copper wire stolen, and it was spliced, and then they lit it afire, and that caused a fire in the tent encampment. So it made it look like government was pushing them out. It was the fire marshal that had grave concerns that somebody was going to get hurt. And anybody living in that tent encampment, we have apartments at all times for anybody that fits the need. So if there's an individual working 40 hours a week, I guarantee you there's a spot for him. We've got over 2,100 housing right now, and if that individual fits the needs, then he would certainly have a home. So please, if you can reach out to that individual and get him to call the department, because maybe he's not aware of the programs out there. There's certainly
All right. So we are out of time, but this does look like a bit of a spirited debate, so we'll add another 2 minutes to the clock.
Something that isn't mentioned very often is healthcare for children, mental health care for children. When you start that young, we have better adults, and a lot of these problems can be mitigated, so we need more funds to go into that as well. It's something that I've worked with for a long time, like I said, whether it's through foster care or family care. There needs to be a lot more added to that aspect as well, because mental health also affects your physical health. So finding ways to have some training, have some help in that area, that's also part of the healthcare system from an early age that will help us keep our healthcare viable.
All right, it looks like conversation's done. We can move on to the next question. This one will be directed to Hunter Guindon of the Green Party. It is said that a rising tide lifts all boats. An improved island economy has the potential to benefit all islanders through job creation and increased tax revenue to invest in high priority areas like health, education, and social programs. How will your government enable and accelerate economic growth in this district?
Thank you. So yes, I love that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. But when we say we lift all boats, it really needs to be all boats. Often economic growth programs are targeted at the top 50% of people, or sometimes the top 2% of people, and we really need to diversify these programs so that when the economy is growing, it's not just benefiting the top 10% of islanders, that is working its way all the way down to the worker actually on the floor in these businesses and in these industries that are experiencing growth. Certainly timely access to healthcare, the plans that we've put forward to strengthen our workforce are all kind of things that if we ignore them in benefit of the economy, we end up with further collateral damage in each of those individual sectors of society. And so our main focus would be to properly invest in healthcare and invest in housing and give people on the ground the basic necessities they need in life to be able to stay in their communities where they want to live, and then further spend the money that they have within that community to help the benefit of the community that they live in.
Thank you. I now invite all the candidates to join in the rebuttal discussion. You have 4 minutes.
Well, investment is key. So investment in things like farm renewable energy programs, investment in clean tech, bioscience sector, funding for tourism operations, protections and adaptation for agriculture, fisheries, aquaculture, that all have climate change impacts involved in it as well, because that's an extremely important factor for all of it. Our economic growth is tied to everything is so connected. Healthcare is connected to it. Immigration is connected to it. Education is connected to it. So it's not like a one-tier approach. It's an approach that we have to address from all these aspects, and our platform has that in it.
I would agree with both Hunter and Richard on this. So the programs, we've done a complete revamp, and like I say, I always give credit where credit's due, but Green Party MLA Annabelle sat down with me, as well as Liberal MLA Gordon McNeely, and we went through all the programs and where the gaps were at together. The three of us sat around my table with the deputy, and one by one, 3 hours later, we worked through it, and it was a great partnership to get some great results, something I'm very proud of. District's very important. We've got 13,000 vehicles a day come through the lights in Kensington. Very proudly, back in 2015 when I started, we used to have monthly meetings, and it was discussed around the table what we need to grow, and Kensington's one of the fastest growing communities in the province, and the number one thing was a business park. We had no more land for a business park, and if you look now, 8 years later, we've got a beautiful business park down the road that both provincial and federal government supported to make happen. Obviously, people want to see a nice rink, schools, a good healthcare system, housing, and we're very fortunate to have been able to do some things. We've got a $2.2 million renovation going into the rink. We've announced a 10-unit seniors building down next to the car wash, which the housing court bought 14 acres there, and the future looks to be about 150 units going in that over the next 5 years. So you need that in the district to enable and continue our economic growth, and I'm proud to have been able to be a part of bringing those things here.
Okay, we can move on to the next question. This question will be directed to Richard Schroeter of the Liberal Party. An island whose primary industries are farming, tourism, and fishing, protecting environment is a top concern for all islanders. Events since the last election, like Hurricane Dorian and Fiona, show the need to take action, not only to reduce emissions, but to protect islanders against the worst impacts of climate change. What will your government do to ensure that our community is protected against the worst impacts of climate change?
Thank you. I spoke with a veteran, actually, when I was first being nominated in Summerside. I spoke with a veteran after that, and he was telling me about the readiness programs that he was involved in, and how, when a veteran retires, how they are not even consulted with on what they should do, like what people can do in these situations. And, they have active working knowledge on what to do to be prepared for things like Fiona and other, other environmental things that are going to occur, and they're going to keep occurring. So having, having a plan beforehand, even as a basis, is something we have to have in place. So working with national forces for partnership. To plan for major events, there's invest at least 3% of the provincial capital budget to climate mitigation and adaptation. Work with farmers, again, talk to the people, the answers are in the room. Work with small craft harbors to adapt, and provide support for fishermen and aquaculture to withstand climate impacts. Provide compensation. I mean, these are the industries that are most important here. And there's many industries here, but these are the basic ones that are kept and made principled around what it is.
All right, thank you, Mr. Schroeter. We will now move on to the candidate rebuttal discussions. All three candidates are allowed to speak, and you guys have 4 minutes.
This is certainly something that, as Greens, we're very passionate about, is not just climate mitigation, but what we're going to do to mitigate the effects of climate disasters that we've already caused and can't stop from happening at this point, like Hurricane Dorian and Hurricane Fiona. We certainly need a full public inquiry into the handling of Hurricane Fiona and what happened behind the scenes and why it happened, so that the next hurricane that comes, we can be much better prepared and have the resources and the right people in the right places at the right time, so that we don't end up in the same position we were with Hurricane Fiona. And of course, those are short-term solutions to problems that we just have to mitigate at this point and can't completely reverse. But on the long-term spectrum, we need to be taking steps now to start reducing the impact of humans on this planet. But with doing that, we need to also support islanders on the back end of that to be able to afford to do these things. Greens would like to look at investing into agrivoltaics, which are a way to use the farmland that we have to produce solar energy while still farming that land, so as to not take farmland out of circulation to create renewable energy. But like I said earlier, the carbon capture credits and paying farmers to plant crops that are going to capture carbon from the air and put it into the soil. All of these other options that there are out there, that if we start doing them now, we can help ourselves in the long term, but then we need to have stuff on the front end here to help us face next year's hurricane and the year's hurricane after that, before we can worry about the impacts of renewable energy and what impact that's going to have on our changing climate.
We've certainly seen some drastic changes in our weather pattern, and I think Fiona was probably one of the worst we've ever seen. So our PC government is working on a 25-year coastal management plan, which would include increased setbacks requirements. But while doing that, a lot of agricultural land is along the water. We have to make sure we consult with the farmers. If they're giving up production land, we need to make sure that we are reimbursing those farmers. We ask a lot of the farmers, and we need to make sure they're at the table. One thing that was really surprising to me, and I don't have the exact number, but it was approximately 20% of our forests have been cut down over the last 20 years. And when you think of it, that's a staggering number. So our government has been planting and will continue. We planted approximately 2 million trees last year, and we'll be planting 1.3 million trees annually every year here on out. As well as our Toonie Transit, it was a tremendous success, and we see a lot of people carpooling. We see a lot of people getting on a bus and taking advantage of that Toonie Transit. But there's one thing that we really need to consider. We're switching everything to electric. So you look at our heat pumps, our hot water heaters, and so forth. Our electrical grid's not going to be able to handle it. And we need to plan for that. We need to make sure we work with our federal government, Maritime Electric, and make sure that we do have the grid and the capability to get us there.
I don't think anybody would argue that. We also hope that new electric grid is buried wires, so that islanders don't end up in the same position that we were all in post-Fiona, watching the hardworking linesmen from across the country that came to put all the poles back up and put all the lines back up. I'm sure many of us were driving past those trucks thinking, why aren't they putting those lines underground so that we don't do this all over again?
Agreed.
All right, we'll move on to the next question. This one will be directed at MacKay of the Conservative Party. It is widely recognized that our healthcare system is in a state of crisis. Many islanders have been without a family doctor or nurse practitioner for years. It will take 10 years before the new medical school produces its first class of practicing doctors. Doctors face challenges keeping up with administrative work, which takes the focus away from their patients. And after a long pandemic, many nursing and other support staff feel overworked and underappreciated. All of this has led to early retirements and issues with recruitment and retention within our healthcare system. What do you propose to do in the next 4 years to improve access and quality of care in PEI?
Well, myself, just like everybody in this room, obviously that's a number one concern, and I know we're hearing it everywhere. This has been something that has been happening for years, and it's really come to a head right now. And the Premier said it best to me the other night. He said, the system can't be fixed, it needs to be rebuilt. And there's a lot to be said about that. So what we're looking to do, and so we've got some medical homes out there now, but he says this election, we're going to be honest, nobody's ever going to have a doctor. The days of everybody having a family doctor are just not there. This is, every province in the country is having the same issue, and I admit when I'm wrong. I thought money could buy our way out of this, and I talked to the health minister in Alberta, and he said, Matt, we got a $14 billion surplus right now, and we can't find doctors. It's a people shortage, you need people. So what we need to do, obviously the medical school is part of it, but in the meantime, we have to provide some free tuition to RCWs and LPNs, as well as paramedics to train them here in Prince Edward Island. We need to listen to the front lines. I know but 3 days ago I had 3 nurses. And this is the frustrating part for me when I'm sitting around the cabinet table. Sometimes you don't always get the truth that comes up. And when I talked to the nurses that day, they all said the same thing. They said, we get surveys put out to us, but the ones that are giving us the surveys are the ones that we're having problems with. So how are we going to say what problems we have? They said, you need to go out and do an internal survey that doesn't have our management doing it, right? Because they're absolutely right. They haven't been listened to, and I 100% agree in that. And the more I'm learning and seeing and talking to those individuals, that they're the voices we need to hear. I talked to a lady today right quick, and she's just finishing her nursing program, and she's moving to Manitoba. And I asked her why she's moving to Manitoba, and she said they've offered me a $50,000 signing bonus, and that $50,000 signing bonus is going to go to my student loan. So we're losing her. So this is the things we need to change. We need to compete with other provinces.
All right, thank you, Mr. MacKay. I now invite all 3 candidates to take part in the candidate rebuttal discussions. You guys have 4 minutes.
So the Liberal platform is adding $92 million in healthcare, and our platform is actually out with realistic dollars attached to it. Adjustment compensation for all physicians, including family, increased number of hours at walk-in clinics, returning service for medical seats, free tuition for all nursing programs in Holland College and UPI, including a return and service contract, which is an important factor as well. Expand the scope of pharmacists, look at nursing practitioners and physician assistants in our ERs. These are some of the measures that we're looking to put in place. There's a lot that needs to be done to even begin to fix what has been broken. It's not a quick solution at all. It is going to take time. There are some things that can be done in the mid, and some things that can be done for the long term. Workers have become overwhelmed. Workplaces have become toxic. This government has sown division amongst the layers of the healthcare industry. The way that the frontline workers were treated is a travesty. It's they were touted as heroes during the pandemic, and when it came to handing out bonuses or negotiating their contracts that are 2 years at a date, they dropped them a budget instead and cast them aside. I mean, when you give money to doctors and nurses and then you leave the frontline staff out of that, it causes division, and it feels like it was on purpose. And people are telling me that they want to move, they want to get a different kind of job, and if we lose frontline workers, it doesn't matter what we do. We don't have a healthcare system anymore. I mean, they were offered, I think, chocolate-covered chips. Like, how can that not make someone furious?
Yes, certainly what we're all hearing from everybody at the doors is that healthcare is their number one issue, and as an Islander also with no doctor, I'm right on board with everybody else there that it's my main issue as well. Greens would immediately invest $37 million in giving the frontline healthcare workers raises and paying them what they deserve to be paid after the tumultuous 2, now 3 years that they have been through. We would remove the political interference between the Premier's office and Health PEI and have Health PEI actually operate as an arm's length body from government, so that the Premier's office isn't meddling in the compensation of nurses or doctors, or getting their fingers into the pot. We're letting the experts deal with it and letting doctors recruit doctors and doctors retain doctors. We would certainly expand the scope of pharmacists beyond what they already have now, and use nurse practitioners and physician's assistants better to our advantage to help take some folks off the patient registry and give them the primary care that they need. I had an interesting conversation that I think Richard also had with some concerned horse owners here in the area, and one thing that really stuck out to me that this woman said to me was that we have the only veterinary school in Atlantic Canada, and horse owners are facing a crisis of a shortage of vets, that horse owners in Kensington would have to transport their horse to Charlottetown, whether it's a broken leg or whatever the problem is, to get emergency veterinary care. And she was wondering how a government can sit up on a stage like this and say that a medical school is going to solve all the problems when we currently have a medical school for veterinarians and we still can't retain them.
We'll just add another 2 minutes to the debate here.
So I want to talk a little bit more about the medical homes. So what these medical homes look like, I believe there's 14 up and running, another 16 started in the fall, is, I'll give you an example. So I've been on the same heart medication for 23 years. I called to get in to see the nurse practitioner. I had to go see my doctor, which I'm grateful to have a family doctor, but I had to go see my doctor to get a prescription, and I was there for 23 years. Where a medical school, what it would look like, yes, there would be a doctor there, there'd be a nurse practitioner, there would be an LPN, but you're going to start with a nurse practitioner. If you don't need a doctor, you will not see a doctor. A doctor is going to be there for somebody to need a doctor. So the nurse practitioners are willing and are going to be able to help out with a lot of these issues. Another one that I've heard a great story on is the new Pharmacy Plus program. So I talked to a lady yesterday. She had a bit of a cold, some sinus infection going on. She went over to Murphy's Pharmacy here, got checked out by Patty, her faithful pharmacist. 15 minutes later, she was given antibiotics and a prescription of some sort and at the door. So she said it was the most amazing experience she had. She didn't have to sit with patients, and so it's creative, innovative ways that are going to help fix it and help guide us through this.
197 million for school. That's the numbers that I heard. For school, that we won't see anybody as a doctor come out for 8 to 15 years. And I guess in the meantime, we die. I'm curious. Like, what are some of the other things that you're proposing that will help? It's unbelievable to me that we're expecting so much from our constituents. Like even for instance with the equine issue that's happening, and the PC person that was there suggested that everybody who owns a horse pool their money together, buy a place, and hire a veterinarian for themselves. It's not supposed to be like this at all.
So we'll, let's add another 2 minutes.
I'd like just follow off where Richard was at. So obviously I'm an avid horse owner. Most people know that we have some horses as well. And obviously this is concerned in this area. So doing a little digging, what really surprised me is that we have approximately 40 veterinarians studying at the vet college. But there's only 10 island students there. The rest are from other provinces and international students that go home. So I think this is a big part of our solution. I talked to a lady yesterday that their daughter wants to be a veterinarian and she can't get into the school because there's no seats. I talked to another gentleman today whose daughter has a 92% mark and she was just applying for nursing. So we're hearing these stories in all industry, and here's the problem. We have the crisis that we're in, whether it's healthcare or veterinary and so forth, and we don't have the seats to do it. And the medical school is the way to do it. I know it's not going to be an easy task, and it's going to take time. But Maggie Leclerc, everybody in this room might know Maggie. She's her babysitter. She just got accepted into Acadia yesterday, and she was turned down twice for a seat to become a doctor. And she was near ready to throw the towel in, right? Because she had a 96% error. We don't have the ability, I believe they're only already taken 4 or 5 of our PEI students to become doctors. So if we don't put our own medical school here, train them, give them a job, we're never going to fix the problem. It's going to be hard times, but we need to do it.
Just 30 seconds left here, but I just wanted to touch on Matt's comment about the Pharmacy Plus program, which I definitely think is a fantastic program, but all these programs are all for nothing if people can't afford the medication that they're prescribed, and so something that is incredibly important to me is the $18 million that we would invest in pharmacare to expand programs so that people aren't choosing between buying a loaf of bread for their kids or buying the medication that they need.
Let's call this one and we'll move on to the next question. This will be directed to Hunter Guindon of the Three Party. There's no denying that access to any kind of housing has become a challenge on Prince Edward Island. It is a factor we hear from our members trying to recruit people to come and live on PEI, and additionally we know that ensuring the most vulnerable have affordable housing is a top priority that must be addressed. We also know to effectively address this issue, the government and the private sector must work together. Private developers must be part of the solution. How will your government encourage private development while ensuring that housing remains affordable for Islanders?
Yeah, so something obviously very near and dear to the hearts of Greens is housing. We've been arguably the loudest advocates for housing on this island for some time. Greens, in particular to the question with private developers, Greens would provide low interest loans to private developers that were signing very clear contracts that they were going to be building affordable housing so that the change in interest rates and the skyrocketing interest rates of the day are not going to delay or completely dissolve the plans for a private developer to build housing. In addition to that though, like the preamble stated there, it's a combined effort between government and private developers. Greens are looking to invest close to $500 million in public housing, private housing, which would include building new units, but also Greens are proposing that we put forward a first right of refusal on any sale of commercial residential property, multi-unit properties that the government could then purchase at the going rate for that, and then the government run it just like they would the housing that we're going to build. Something that we've seen in the past are the mobile rental vouchers, which are certainly a band-aid solution to a giant gaping wound that ends up just putting government money into the pockets of landlords and not building any new doors. We can fund mobile rental vouchers all we want, but if a single new door doesn't get built, then we're no further ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Guindon. I now invite the candidates to take part in the rebuttal discussions. You guys have 4 minutes.
So, like I said earlier, right now we're 2,800 units short of Prince Edward Island. We've got a negative vacancy rate. So we've done some numerous things in a short period. An example, we put legislation in the fall to put a rental freeze of the 10% and the 5.2% that were coming out. I wasn't very popular with the landlords for a while, I'm still not, but at the end of the day it was the right decision, and the reason I say that is there's no other homes to go to. So what we've tried to do is build as much as we can. So right now, like I say, we put capital budget in of, I believe it's $158 million. We've got 451 affordable units starting here. 10 are going here in Kensington alone, as well as the other land. The big thing with developers, they can't go out and borrow and make the numbers work at 6.9% interest. So what did we do? We come in with a 2% interest loan for 10 years. So the first $50 million went in, it was gone in a matter of 3 days. Private developers from tip to tip across this province took advantage of it, and there's 251 units being started as we speak. As well as there's another $50 million coming out in July to target another 60 units. And then if we need the third $50 million, we're certainly going to do that. This 2% money is enticing to developers. As well as we have a program, it's $55,000 a door. So any developer that wants to build affordable housing, we will give them $55,000 a door, but they have to keep it affordable for 15 to 20 years. Another thing that we've heard that we put in our platform is rent to own. We've seen a lot of people that can afford a payment and need the ability to do that. The banks are very tight on the loans, so we've developed a rent to own program, as well as also eligible up to $2,500 towards closing costs. Because a lot of people just don't have the closing costs to close on their home. So we've got a $2,500 grant on that as well. And we extended the down payment assistance program twice in our 4-year tenure. And if we need to change that again, we certainly will. So we're doing absolutely everything we can. Like I say, we've got every modular home that land can we get our hands on. We've partnered with Howard College, the Construction Association. We've got the high school industrial arts program. We're going to build us tiny homes as well. But it's going to take time. We're 2,800 units short, and it's going to be a couple of years to get us caught up.
So our platform, it includes $17.7 million in new money for housing. Developed the Own First program, which will provide, it provides loan financing and low interest. Working with nonprofits and co-ops to provide grants for housing options in schools as well. Supporting innovative solutions such as tiny homes, prefabricated homes, containing housing, and yeah, that's it. But and once again, included in this is rentals as well, because when you can afford $1,700 in rent, you should be able to afford a house too. So there's a lot of areas to work on in that.
I'll definitely give Matt credit for the rental freeze, the increased freeze that certainly kept many people in their homes that otherwise would not have been, but something that we've been promised time and time again and still don't have is a rental registry. Unless you have your finger on the pulse of these rent freezes and other government policies that are being put forward, if your landlord decides they want to give you an illegal rent increase, or you're moving into a new place that the rent has been illegally increased, unless you're paying attention to all these things along the road, you don't necessarily know. If we had a rental registry, it'd be an easy one point of access where you could go and look up that address and understand whether or not the rent is legal.
We'll extend it by another 2 minutes.
Also, another issue that I'm sure we've all heard is building permits, and it's probably one of the most frustrating things that I've had to deal with in the last 4 years. We've got a housing crisis, and it's taken 4 or 5 months to get a building permit. So we're taking advantage and moving toward a simpler system to get instant building permits. I know I dealt with a developer here in the fall, and he was building a 40-unit apartment building, and he was waiting 6 months for a building permit, which was completely unacceptable. So hearing these stories, this is what I take to cabinet and voice my concerns to impact change. So you're going to see a different format in how the building permit process works. You're going to be able to go in, they're going to give you a checklist of what you need. Once you have these things, you're going to get the building permit issued to speed the process up.
Just want to touch again on the rental registry, elaborate a little bit there. We were promised several times we would have a government rental registry, which we certainly need, and then a group of concerned volunteers in Charlottetown got fed up with the inaction and were able to hop on a computer and in a weekend build a comprehensive rental registry where people could go in and input their own information, and that volunteer paid for and managed and built rental registry has returned over $200,000 of illegal rent increases to tenants. Something that a group of computer-minded people put together in a weekend, and we've been 4 years now without them.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question. This one will be directed towards Richard Schroeter of the Liberal Party. Rural arts organizations are integral to the nurturing of communities. A healthy arts and culture scene supports population growth, which directly impacts and encourages business, product, and housing development in areas outside of Charlottetown and Summerside, while inviting youth, newcomers, and immigrants to build their lives in rural areas. How will your party support rural arts and culture, including your commitment to strengthening engagement and funding?
Rural arts and culture, it's essential to our economic development. I do a lot of crafts, I do a lot of performance-based things as well, and it's part of the color and part of the excitement of the things that we have to offer here. So, you know, working with our arts and cultural industries, simply to invest and to make sure that carries on. And, you know, looking at the economic side of it too, where marketing for here, marketing even for away, where, you know, it doesn't have to be always just a seasonal events. It can be something that we can offer to the world, and looking to invest in that, and being someone who enjoys doing those kinds of things. I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer.
My first position, sorry, I'm not here.
Let's give the timers a second to reset the clock there.
Don't talk about it.
4 minutes for all three candidates to discuss and rebut.
Thank you. So for my first role was Minister of Economic Growth, Tourism and Culture. I enjoyed every minute in that portfolio, and it was quite the learn. One thing I did learn in a short period of time is how much our cultural community provides to our economy, and it's tremendous what you see. So it was very rewarding to watch. One thing that I'm quite proud of is the film industry. So my last election, it was my first election actually, and I was campaigning through Maggie, and I stopped at a door, and there was a gentleman there that was on his way to Toronto for work because there was nothing here for a film industry, and he was leaving his family behind to go there. And one thing I said, we're missing a huge opportunity with our culture here in our film industry. So it took some challenges, it took some battles, but very proud to say that we had digs down here for the last season, and it put us on the map. We're very competitive right now with our film industry grants, and you're going to see more film come to PEI. It always drove me foolish when they shot Anne of Green Gables in Toronto. Here we are, Prince of Ron, we're known for Anne, and they shot that in Toronto because they had better tax rebates there. One thing that we do have here is a tremendous asset is the Confederation Trail. And the Premier's vision, which we started, but he wants to see this through, is to have historic, basically memorabilia and history throughout the Confederation Trail, island-wide, every community, what it was about, how it got here, what it specialized in, because the Confederation Trail is used by hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people every year. They come here to ride and walk that trail, and there's a lot of times you can go down that trail and not see anything for miles. So we're going to try and provide some art and a bit of history and some culture behind it to help improve that trail system.
I sat on the board of Film PEI for the last few years, and it is a growing industry here. I worked in TV and film for about 11 years in my younger days, and you know, it's one of those industries that connects and can connect all kinds of other industries, whether it is building industries, whether it is agricultural even, and scenic industries. It can connect us all. The only thing that we don't really have here are mountains, and we can put them in digitally now, which is wonderful. So it's good to, you know, I do have to commend the government for helping in that area. I mean, we can always use more help, of course, but it is something that we can all tap into, even just to tell our stories, and tell our stories in our own way.
We certainly live in the most beautiful part of Canada, and the culture that surrounds PEI itself is second to none, and is why, you know, so many people come here every year to experience what we all get to experience all year, every year. But those beautiful landscapes and, you know, different parts of nature that people come here for and that are so deeply rooted in our culture need to be protected, so that, you know, my grandkids and their grandkids are able to also experience those. And so an island-wide land use plan would be something that we would incorporate into both the culture aspect of our platform and the tourism aspect of our platform, to protect those beautiful views, the landscapes, the, you know, beaches, all these things that we all know and love and take for granted, and that people travel here for, need to be well protected.
All right. we'll move on to the final question tonight, which will be directed to MacKay of the Conservative Party. Our local business community has faced a challenging period since the last election, with the global pandemic, extreme weather events, soaring inflation, and worker shortages. The costs associated with running a small business, including the regulatory burden of government, have only increased in recent years. Given that almost 90% of Canadians who work in the private sector work for a small or medium-sized business, supporting such businesses is vital to the sustainability of our communities. What will your party do to support our local small business community?
Thank you. So one thing with when COVID hit, it really created a lot of discussions with the business community, and it really brought government and the business community closer. They were around the table making decisions, and looking back, I believe there was 23 COVID programs rolled in to help Islanders and the business community, and a lot of that come from the business community and the tourism operators. They were a voice around the table. So it really developed a great relationship in being able to develop programs. Like I said, one of the very first things that they said to us is the red tape, the amount of programs, they're complicated. And this is where I sat down, like I said, with my opposition parties and both MLAs, unavailable and MacKay, and we went through these programs together and made some positive change that really helped the business community out. Wage subsidies are so important, especially with the tourism operators. It's a seasonal business. There's a short window to make money. So I'm proud to say that our RJIs that a lot of tourism operators use here, we've increased that now by an extra 2 weeks and up to paying $18 towards the wage that they're paying. Public transit was another one, Cavendish especially. There was a lot of workers that just couldn't get to work, so we partnered with the municipality of Cavendish and helped support them and brought public transit into Cavendish, which is a huge help. As well as we're going to maintain the small business tax at 1%. It's the lowest in Atlantic Canada, and it was something that the business community has really pushed for, and we're committed to keep it that. And last, obviously one of the last things that I heard over the last 4 years from the business community was internet, trying to operate a business with poor internet, and now we're down to the last 4% of Islanders to get proper high-speed internet. So it's tremendously helped the business community, and this last 4% is going to help the final businesses that have got it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. MacKay. I now invite the candidates to join in the rebuttal discussions. You guys have 4 minutes.
Yeah, so I'll certainly second Matt's project there with the rural internet. That's something that we would absolutely carry on with and try to even expedite to do even faster. We're certainly in a business, in a time in business where moving to online sales is, if not an extra source of revenue, for some businesses now their only source of revenue, and it's pretty hard to sell stuff online and talk to your customers when you have dial-up internet and don't have access to stable internet from wherever you operate your business. In addition to that, for small businesses, there's many businesses on this island who are facing the same kind of conflict or issues with tenancy as tenants in residential properties are. And our Green government would look at reviewing the Residential Tenancy Act and using that to put some legislation into place to protect island businesses and to better protect island businesses from exorbitant rent increases in the properties that they rent to operate their businesses, or unjust evictions from those businesses. Many of you may know the Seaside Bookshop in Summerside has just been evicted from the store that they currently occupy by their landlord. And it's things like that if we can keep those businesses in our communities and protect them from being forced to just pack everything into boxes and move on and perhaps never reopen their business again, then we'd have a thriving business community both in this district and from tip to tip.
So our platform includes some COVID-19 tourism debt program relief. That's going to be very low interest lending. Implementation of a seasonal workers benefit program, tourism growth and rehabilitation grants, and review of the provincial tax program, and in consultation with the businesses to see exactly what they need and how we can help them. And once again, it's talking to the people and knowing that they have the answers in the room. We need to be part of that. They need to be part of that solution, but we need to make sure that we understand that that is part of the solution. And advertising. I mean, when I moved here, I was very pleasantly surprised to see how much we have to offer. And I bring people to the places that we have here, and I tell people about the places that we have here. Having a more targeted way, of course, to up our profile is key as well. But we have a lot to offer, and we shouldn't be as quiet as we are about it from the government. District 10 has so much.
District 20.
Sorry, District 20. I've been on the streets all day long.
Okay, so I think we're good to wrap that up. Thank you to the candidates. This concludes the question and rebuttal portion of the evening. We're now going to hear the closing remarks from each candidate. Each candidate is reminded of the strict 4-minute time limit. The order of speaking was randomly drawn with the candidates as witnesses. And I'll invite Hunter Guindon of the Green Party to present his closing remarks first.
Thank you, and thank you again so much to the Chamber for hosting this. This is a very important event for folks like you to be able to ask questions that are pressing to you and important to you and get some answers from right across the board. Like I said, I'm an everyday person just like all of you. I'm a renter, I don't have a family doctor, I have a disability, half the time I can't afford the medicine that I need. I'm not, I didn't grow up in politics, I haven't been around politics my entire life. I've gone through the school system just like probably many of your children have or many of you have. I've maintained a modern student loan and had to pay that back. I'm running in politics because I didn't feel represented. I'm fall into many of those categories, and still I haven't yet felt represented in politics. And I wanted to be that person that, for people like me who don't feel well represented by the status quo politicians, to have somebody to vote for and to hopefully have represent their district. It really struck me the other day when that person said to me, "Oh, you guys just come around when you want to vote," and it's a personal goal of mine if I get elected to not be that person, to be the person that in 4 years when I come and knock on your door, you know me by my name, and I'm bringing you your favorite Timbit, and we're sitting down at your kitchen table and having coffee just like we do all the time. It's very important to me that politicians speak to the people and not just the Premier's office in Charlottetown is making decisions for people on the ground in Kensington, telling them what they want to be done in their community. And it's important that we hear from folks like you and knock on the doors throughout your tenure as government, and not just at election time, to hear from the people and what they actually want and how we can design, implement, and then invest in programs that suit the needs of the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guindon. I now invite Richard Schroeter of the Liberal Party to give his closing remarks.
Door after door, I am seeing people who are afraid, and they are feeling abandoned. Like I said in my opening remarks, it doesn't matter the color of the stripes that you may vote for. Healthcare is a pillar of what Canada is about, and watching it road like this is very difficult. And I know that there are COVID issues and maybe excuses around some of that, but when the Premier says that in 2 years we'll have access, it just makes me wonder why that didn't happen 2 years ago, and today I wouldn't be able to say that. It's very upsetting. I'm not a political type of, like a politician type of person. I'm certainly a complainer about politicians, for sure. But this is an opportunity for me to be the kind of politician that, I always argued that there should be. And that is listening to people in the room and taking your voices into the legislature. And as Hunter said, not only seeing me when it's time to vote, you need to know that I'm here for you all the time. And I think I've shown that with some of the groups that I've met, because, I'm only a candidate, and I still was able to help facilitate a few things and send it up the line. So whether I get voted in or not, that doesn't get lost. And that's really what I want to do for all of us. Our platforms are very different in a lot of ways, in many ways. I'm not exactly sure what the platform for PCs are. I mean, it wasn't something that was shown to us. And I believe that we have some very similar things in our platforms as well. I feel that these sort of sometimes are a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Ideal. And we're trying to provide something that is a little bit more realistic. I mean, there is a meme that is used quite a bit with degrees where it's about the difference between equity and equality, which I think really shows the difference in the way that we look at things. And the meme that they talk about is a tall guy looking over a fence can see what he needs to see, but there's everybody else who can't. So building boxes after boxes to make sure everybody can see over the fence is a way to go, but the expense of building boxes after boxes after boxes, it's not realistic. The way that we look at it is it's more economical to take down the fence and let people get to the things they need as they are. Sorry, I'm not using all my time, but I'm not a man of a lot of flowery words, really. It's just, I like to get to the point.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeter. And I now invite Matthew MacKay of the Conservative Party to give his closing remarks.
Thank you everyone for coming in this evening. I also would like to thank the Chamber, and I'd also like to thank Hunter and Richard for clean debate. Thank you, gentlemen. So I've been elected since 2015. Looking back, I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. I remember the first time in question period, I'm looking across the floor to Premier McLaughlin at the time, and my knees were shaking so bad I thought I was going to faint right there in the floor. And I've come a long way. I certainly learned a lot. I've enjoyed every moment of being your MLA. I enjoyed being in opposition, and I certainly enjoyed being part of Dennis King's government. The Premier has put me in some big roles, and there were some times I didn't know if I was going to be able to get through them, but with the support of so many people in this district and my family, certainly helped me out tremendously. I look at this room and I'm sure that half the people in this room have my own personal cell number, and that's the type of community that I want. I want people to be able to pick up the phone and call me like you have, to stop at the rink when our kids are skating, to have a conversation, and I want to continue that way. I've stayed humble through this whole period, and we've been able to do some great things together. I feel like I've provided some good, honest representation, and I hope I made the district proud, because I certainly tried my very best to work hard for you. I've always listened to the district and your voices, and I want to reflect on some of the things that we've been able to accomplish from your voices over the last 4 years. There was approximately 40 kilometers of pavement coming in this district. Prior to that, the 4 years prior to that, there was 9 kilometers. We've been able to pave all the roads almost in Kensington. As the mayor is aware, the last little bit of road work is going to be done here this spring, and the whole community of roads will be caught up. We ended up being a partner in a soccer complex at the school. That was one of the first projects we were able to contribute. And you look at our kids that can enjoy that soccer complex now. Back under the previous administration, they talked about closing the rural schools, if you remember that. And Kensington wasn't on the list, but it was close to being slated on the list. And looking now, that school is growing. We've been able to provide $1.2 million worth of renovations to that facility over the last 4 years. I listened to the community and the business, and in fairness, the federal government was great. I give Wayne Easter and Heath McDonald credit too, because they were great partners. And between us all, we ended up bringing a beautiful business park to Kensington that is much needed. And I know there's approximately 4 lots sold in there, which was tremendous. Our rink needed significant renovations, so we listened to the community, and we were able to bring a little over $2 million in renovations. Housing is a need, and I want to thank Debbie Ramsey and her family. That's a piece of property down there that many developers have wanted to buy over the years, and they wouldn't sell. Debbie sold it to us as government and for the community, because she said her husband Blair had a vision of what this was supposed to be, and it was for housing for low-income and seniors, and that's exactly what we're doing. So by buying that project, the first 10 units is starting in April. The infrastructure is going in, and we're going to put as many units in there as we can. I'm running out of time, but my next projects, and these are 2 things that I've heard, and this is what I'm trying to focus on the next 4 years. One is the water and sewer on Broadway Street North. It's been a tremendous issue for a long time. And secondly, I hear it all the time at the doors, we need a rec center. People miss the bowling lanes, they miss the social aspect of it, and it's my goal in this next 4 years when we're elected to bring a rec center back to Kensington. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. MacKay, and thank you to all the candidates tonight. Let's give them all a Thanks again for coming out tonight. I'd like to thank everyone for attending. Everyone drive home safe. And remember to vote on April 3rd. Every vote counts.